Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Logan Blackman Show. I hope you all are ready to get learned up today, because I sure am. Oh, my goodness. But before we get into what we're going to talk about today, let's go over the housekeeping items first. Make sure to follow the Logan Blackman Show on every single form of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and, of course, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can find me on Twitter at Logan_Blackman. Instagram accounts the Logan Blackman Show. Facebook and YouTube, search Logan Blackman Show. Make sure you like and follow the Facebook page. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our Mock Draft 2.0 video. That'll be out, or it's been out since Saturday, so I'd appreciate that. We're going to have a new style of video coming out this weekend. We are going to go through the last 20 quarterback classes. So I've ranked each class, so dating from last year all the way back to 2004, and I've applied point tallies to Super Bowls, Super Bowl appearances, conference championship appearances, MVPs, Pro Bowls, all that stuff, and I've concluded the top 5 quarterbacks. I didn't rank the quarterbacks individually, but the top 5 quarterbacks from each draft class, and came up with a ranking system for that, so that video will be out on Saturday. We also have videos coming out for you next week for the United States, as they are in the CONCACAF Nations League. They're playing Panama on March 20th, and they just released their actual squad today. They had a 16-man preliminary squad come out recently, but they just released the official 23-man squad, and it's an interesting squad. The United States men's national team, if you've been paying attention, it's kind of been battling an injury bug, most notably in the forward position. So the striker and forward positions are not really like the most bountiful as they've been in years past, but that's no excuse, really. If we're being 100% honest here, there's no excuse for the United States not to come out on top in the Nations League once again. Mock Draft 3.0 will be out for you in, I believe, 2 weeks' time. If I'm not mistaken, if I could be a little bit off on my dates here, but there's some stuff in the NFL draft that we've got to discuss. We obviously got to talk about free agency as well, but still, make sure to follow the Logan Blackman Show on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, check out the LoganBlackmanShow.com. All the mock draft blog posts, all the quarterback prospect rankings blog posts will be on the website. You can also find links to the YouTube channel on there as well, so make sure you go check that out. And also make sure to check out the Believe in Iowa podcast, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and both those podcasts. Make sure to leave a rating under 5 stars on both. Doesn't necessarily need to be a 5-star rating, though. I'd greatly appreciate a 5-star rating more than anything else in the whole wide world. And you know what? I don't really give a 5-star rating at this point in time. That's daylight savings time or whatever the hell we just experienced. I get them all confused. Where it's like, oh, we spring forward or we spring backwards. Like, I know we're in the spring, so we're springing forward and we fall back in the fall, but still, my body's not mentally adjusted to it, I guess. Like, I woke up this morning and it was 7 o'clock when I woke up. Usually I get up around 6:30. That's usually my go-to time. I get up around 6:30, but I was up at 7 this morning. I couldn't get my happy ass out of bed because I looked outside and it was still dark out. Like, I love these late, like, the sun's still out at 7 o'clock. Like, that's really cool. It's really fun to see that kind of stuff. It gets you, like, in that spring spirit and stuff like that. Like, spring break is next week, which is ridiculous. St. Patrick's Day is on Monday. Selection Sunday is on Sunday, which is ridiculous to think about. And I've done a very good job. You could trust me, ladies and gentlemen, that I have done a fantastic job at watching college basketball this year. And I promise you that my bracket, I say I promise you, not even like in a cocky way. No, I'm saying I promise you because there's not a literal chance that my bracket this year can be any worse than what it was last year. If you remember what my bracket was last year, I had Auburn and Kentucky in the national championship game with Kentucky winning. You can do your research and see what happened with both those teams, but that's what I'll leave you with. That was my national championship. That was it. You can go and do your own research on what happened to those two teams, but long story short, I was done in my bracket pool after was it day 1 only? I don't know if we even crept into day 2, if I'm being 100% honest. Now, I've tried to follow a little bit closer this year, but I've figured this out throughout the course of my lifetime, that the less you pay attention, the more likely you are to have a better bracket, unless your name is Logan, because your bracket will suck regardless of what you like. I haven't won a bracket pool since I was in 7th grade. That was when Brandon Knight was playing for Kentucky, where it was night, and Kentucky hit the little floater, I believe, against Ohio State. That was the last time I won a bracket pool. That was a long-ass time ago, kids. Like, you know when you talk about, oh, that was a decade ago. No, this was damn near 20 years ago. Not 20 years ago exactly, because you're like, okay, so we're talking about 15 years ago. 15 years ago was the last time I won a bracket pool at anything. Like, it's been a long... Now, fantasy hockey, fantasy football, yeah, got that on lockdown. I'm on my fantasy hockey league 2 years in a row. Might win it a third year, though. Jack Hughes and Matt Chuck, both on IR. Not necessarily the most ideal situation to be in, but we move. That's not going to stop me from winning my third straight championship in the third year that this league has been in existence. But those things I run. March Madness, man, I have not been very good. And what's sad is that everybody looks to me, and this is the rapport that I have built with people, is that, oh, I am the most knowledgeable human being of all time. And I'm not saying I'm not. Obviously, I can't confirm nor deny these allegations. But when people come up and ask me about college basketball, I have to respectfully tell them to F off because I'm not going to give them the answers here. I don't have the answers, Sway. I don't have the answers. So you need to go to another more reputable source here because that is not me. Now, the whole draft expert thing that we've done, that came from March Madness with Seth Davis back when Georgetown was supposed to be good after they won the Big East tournament, and they shit the bed in the first round, I think, against Colorado. After Seth Davis told me there's a good chance they can make it 2 rounds, they could be the sleeper team. I was like, okay, Seth, I trust you, and they didn't. They didn't do that. So the least you know, the better. But this whole daylight savings thing, it's really screwing my head right now. Like, I still haven't adjusted my clock in the living room. I got a nice little... an actual clock, like not a digital clock. It's an actual clock with, the minute hand, the hour hand, and all that stuff. It ticks, does all that stuff. I haven't changed my clock in the stove either, or the oven, not the stove, on the oven. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle, but it's going to get nice once you get going, and once we get to fall, and we get that fall backwards thing, oh my goodness, it's going to feel so nice. That little break, like, yes, I know it gets darker earlier, like, oh my god, it's so depressing that it's getting sundown going at 4. I don't care. That first initial break is awesome. This first initial break here sucks major ass. It does. And depending on who you ask, free agency, which is conveniently around the same exact time, that sucks major ass depending on who you look at. Gee, what the hell was that? That wasn't a hiccup or anything. I was trying to laugh, and then my body just stopped working. So it sounded like, I promise I wasn't hiccuping. I don't do that stuff. But yeah, free agency is an interesting time for a lot of people because it's like which teams will decide to be all in, which teams are going to be stuck in football purgatory this year, which teams are going to absolutely blow the ship up. And the team that I didn't really expect to be linked or talking about blowing it up. And blowing it up's not the right word for this team, but they made some surprising moves that I just didn't see happening, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. Like, they were the ones that really kicked it off. It wasn't even... Free agency period hadn't even started yet. This was this was late last week, where this was all going down. Geno Smith, starting quarterback Geno Smith, who's coming off of... Not like the year that he had the season prior, but still a very solid year. Completion percentage went up, passing yards went up, touchdowns actually went up as well. I didn't even realize that. But the interceptions went up, which weren't great. But the Seahawks were one game away from not only making the playoffs, but winning a freaking division title. Like, they're not too incredibly far off here. And Geno Smith is a very solid quarterback. I don't know if I would say very, very good. And no, he's a good quarterback. I don't want to make it sound like I'm dissing Geno. I love Geno Smith. But Geno Smith was traded to the Raiders for a third-round draft pick. Like that, and it's still in principle, I know, because the league season needs to start first, but the Raiders have talked about not only are they trading for Geno, they're going to lock him up to a new contract, so he's their new starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. And for the Raiders' perspective, I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. Now, Geno Smith will be 35 in October, which is not ideal, but if you look at the standard age of quarterbacks nowadays, that's not really that big of a deal. I mean, you look at Tom Brady. I mean, okay, I'm not going to compare anybody to Tom Brady because Tom Brady's a freaking anomaly. He's his own thing. I'm not going to talk about him. But like players like Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, these guys are not coming off their greatest years of all time. But it's not for unforeseen for quarterbacks to keep getting better as they get older. Or not get better, but stay the same or stay consistently good in the latter parts of their career. It's not like an abnormal thing to do. And Geno Smith, these past couple years in Seattle, has been a very good quarterback. You could say a top 18 quarterback for sure. Easily top 18 quarterback. And I say that because in the Logan Blackman Show preseason rankings and the staff rankings, Geno Smith was the 18th best quarterback in there. But you could make an argument for him being even higher than that. Geno Smith's a good quarterback. And the Raiders, this is what it told me really. Not really much about the Raiders. About the Raiders too, but Geno Smith getting traded to Raiders and them talking about linking him up to a long-term deal told me that they don't think they're going to get one of the top quarterback options. Because I've said this before, I've said it before, I'll say it again. My thought process was if Shedeur Sanders was there, they were going to take him at 6. Or they were going to try and make a move up the draft board. But if you look at teams like the Titans, the Browns, the Giants, teams that could potentially move around the draft board, whether it's up or down, they're not going to want to fall all the way back to 6. So them locking up Geno to a quote-unquote long-term deal, and apparently per reports they haven't agreed on anything yet. They have yet to reach a new deal per NBC Sports. That tells me the quarterbacks they're going to want are not going to be available. So I would not look at this point in time for the Las Vegas Raiders to move for a quarterback. And it makes sense. I mean, Pete Carroll's the head coach now. Like when you have an older head coach, what do older head coaches hate more than anything in the world? Yeah, that's rookies. I'm not saying Pete Carroll's like every single head coach and every single old head coach hates rookies, but it's a pretty tried and true method that older head coaches who have had success in the past, like Pete Carroll has, and winning Super Bowl and going to another Super Bowl and stuff like that, and with Chip Kelly coming in as the offensive coordinator, he's not going to be somebody that really is hankering for a nice young quarterback to mold. No, he's in the twilight of his career. Pete Carroll right now is 73 years old. He'll turn 74 in September. He doesn't want to sit around and nurture a young quarterback. No, he wants to try his best and win. And the Raiders, their best chance of winning right now is making those types of moves, is getting guys like Geno Smith in the door. I'm not saying Geno Smith's a guy that will take you from like point A to point B, but he'll definitely improve the Raiders on what they were last year and is a vast upgrade on what they had in Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. As much as I like Gardner Minshew, they're not even in the same stratosphere and levels of quarterback. That's just the facts. And the Raiders are going to be one of those teams to look for. Not saying like they'll challenge for like Super Bowls or anything, but you know, they could be improved. Having a quarterback like Geno, like quarterback's the most important position on the football field. If you have an actual competent quarterback like they now do have, that drastically improves your team. And then with Geno Smith leaving, they also cut Tyler Lockett, which surprised me because Tyler Lockett just felt like a Seahawk for life. He didn't really look like somebody that would hitch a fit at whatever happened. He was like, I'm going to be in Seattle. I'm going to end my career here in Seattle. And they cut him. That move surprised me. And then at the same time, DK Metcalf requested a trade. So now you have Geno Smith getting traded. You have Tyler Lockett getting cut. And then DK Metcalf, your number one receiver, by whatever you want to call it, by view, because statistically, Jackson Smith-Njigba last year was the team's number one receiver. But in regards to quote-unquote aura, I hate saying that, but as the kids say aura, that's DK Metcalf. And he got traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Was that a team that a lot of people were really thinking was going to be a team that would be in the market for trading for DK Metcalf? No. The teams that I saw getting linked with a trade for DK Metcalf were teams down in the South and the Bills. Because the Bills, if there's a player open for trade, they're going to be linked to the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about another one here in a little bit. But DK Metcalf, the thing that surprised me was that he said he wanted warm weather and he wanted confident quarterback play or something along the lines of that, where he needed something with the quarterback play. And he goes to Pittsburgh. And not only does he go to Pittsburgh, he reportedly agreed to a 5-year, $150 million extension. Like, what? He was traded for a second-round draft pick and a swap, along with a swap in the 6th and 7th rounds. Like, I didn't see that one coming at all. I'm not saying I didn't see a DK Metcalf trade happening. I just didn't see it happen to the Steelers, who are the antithesis of South-worn team and confidence in the quarterback position. Apparently, they're going to sign Aaron Rodgers, which could be its own, thing. But I don't know. What was the thing that got that line over? Because obviously he was going to deny or go wherever he wanted to go. So what drew Pittsburgh in? And then you got him with freaking George Pickens. And I'm not saying this is a bad move for the Steelers because the Steelers need some wide receiver help. They were obviously going to draft one with the 21st pick before the DK Metcalf trade. I don't know what they're going to do now, whether you look at defensive tackle, you look at corner. Omari and Hampton could be an option here because Najee Harris signed with the Los Angeles Chargers. So there's a few other things the Steelers could do rather than just pinpoint on like Matthew Golden or Emeka Egbuka or somebody like that. But I did not see the Steelers being the DK Metcalf team. I really didn't. And as for Aaron Rodgers, it looks like it's going to be either the Giants or the Steelers are the team that was reported that he could go to the Vikings. No, the only reason that report's coming out is because it'd be funny to see, Aaron Rodgers complete the Brett Favre circle. Packers, Jets, Vikings. Like, that would be really funny to see. But no, obviously that wasn't going to happen. So it's either the Giants, who have been linked with Aaron Rodgers for quite a bit now, and the Steelers, who, if you remember a few weeks ago, were talked about trading for Trevor Lawrence, which, again, complete bullshit rumor that someone just got bored and made up. There's no way the Jaguars, who just paid Trevor Lawrence last offseason, were going to trade him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, an AFC team who they're going to be competing with playoff position with. You're not going to be able to give up enough picks to get him out of Jacksonville, especially since they just hired Liam Cohen. Like, why would Liam Cohen go down to Jacksonville if there wasn't a quarterback in place? Because I sure as hell believe he's not going down there for Mac Jones or now Nick Mullins. He wasn't doing that. And they're only going to do that for any of the quarterbacks you're going to draft this year. So no, that was never going to happen. But, around this time, people get bored. So that's what we've got to do. Oh, and speaking of getting bored, Mike Florio, he opened his mouth, which is always it's always fun around this time because Mike Florio will come out with the most random bullshit you could possibly think of. It's every year. It's like clockwork. It's like every time this year, there's some report that Mike Florio pulls out of his ass and is like, here's the new trade. This is going to happen. Prepare yourselves for this. And this year's was that Sam Darnold was going to re-sign with the Vikings. The Vikings were going to trade JJ McCarthy. That was his new report. Expect it to happen. Which we said was the JJ McCarthy trade talk. We've put a kibosh on that from the jump. That is the dumbest idea ever because you're just hitching your post to Sam Darnold. And the stuff with, we talked about Sam Darnold re-signing, but on a 1-year deal. Not on a long-term contract. No 3-year deals or anything like that. No, a 1-year deal and let JJ get fully recovered from his knee injury and then unleash him to the Wolves. That's what you've got to do. That was one of the options. I'm not saying I shouldn't say that's what you got to do. You have other options there. But you were never trading JJ McCarthy. You weren't. You drafted him 10th overall last year. You traded up. Sure, it was one spot, but you traded up to get him. You were not trading him the following season. You're not doing that. Because here's the thing, and I think people sometimes forget about this, how important it is to have a rookie quarterback contract. The Vikings had, I believe, the top 5, I don't know the exact placement, but they had a top 5 cap space in the league this offseason. And you're going to spend however much to re-sign Sam Darnold, who's been good for 1 year? No, that's stupid. I saw Dan Orlovsky talking about a $55 million contract annually. What the hell have we come to where we're talking about giving Sam Darnold that kind of money? Did we forget about what happened in New Jersey and with Carolina? Yes, he was really good with the Vikings with Justin Jefferson outside. Yeah, that was really cool. I loved seeing him be that level of player. But it's not something that we are going to be confident that's sustainable. Sure, if JJ McCarthy, there's a chance JJ McCarthy's not going to be very good. Yeah, there's a 100% chance that could happen. I don't think so, because I think JJ McCarthy's very talented. But if that chance happens, guess what? You haven't hitched your post to him. You didn't sign him to a long-term lucrative extension like people were talking about with Sam Darnold. You didn't do that. It's a lot easier to maneuver out of that situation. And why not signing Sam Darnold to a long-term deal like the Seahawks? Replace Geno Smith with Sam Darnold, which I think is a good move for Seattle. I mean, getting rid of Geno Smith is a really questionable decision, but you got a lot younger at the quarterback position as well. He's a West Coast kid, so maybe it works out then. Maybe him and Jack Smith and Jigba build up an insane repertoire together over there in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe that goes very fruitful. He had success against the 49ers this past year, so maybe that'll carry over to the division this year. Now, the Rams, we're not going to talk about the Rams stuff, but the 49ers played pretty good against them. So we'll look at that one first, but yeah, the Vikings, they have made a lot of very good signings. They really have. The Minnesota Vikings, one of their big problem areas, I guess you could say, was along their offensive and defensive line. Yes, the secondary is not great because of all the free agents that they've had, and they did end up re-signing Byron Murphy, and I've seen a lot of people talk about them trading for Sauce Gardner, which I didn't really see happening, but hey, that would be crazy if it did. And Sauce Gardner's stock's pretty low in comparison to recent years where people talking about him being the best cornerback in football. Like, I remember we joked about it during the season where we were calling him Ahmad Gardner because he's not Sauce anymore. He no longer Sauce Gardner. He's Ahmad Gardner. He's not very good anymore. But that's just the narrative of corners in the NFL. That's just what happens. That's just what happens. But the Vikings have been so good. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave on the defensive line are very, very good gets. I don't know if Javon Hargrave's officially official yet, but Jonathan Allen's official after the Commanders cut him. They signed him to a 3-year contract. You got Will Fries on the offensive line as well from the Colts. And you also got Brian Kelly from the Colts as well. Ryan Kelly, from the Colts. Vastly improving your interior offensive line. Like, the Vikings were like, okay, we like our tackles. Brian O'Neill, Christian Darrisaw, great. Interior offensive line definitely needs some work. JJ McCarthy's coming off a knee injury. We have to build a wall around him for succeed. Like, we can have all these weapons, sure. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. We can have all those guys. If we don't have an offensive line in front of him, what's the point? And at Michigan, JJ McCarthy had a fairly solid offensive line with not a lot of big name talent around him. You had like Ryan Wilson on the outside, but that was about it, really. Cornelius Johnson was also there, I believe. Colston Loveland is going to be a first-round draft pick this year. But the Michigan offensive line was very solid, and the Vikings did a really good job at building that back up. I think bringing Byron Murphy back's big. Aaron Jones, bringing him back to a 2-year contract. 1,000-yard rusher last year, if I remember correctly. Like, Aaron Jones is still a very solid running back. He might be over the age of 30. He might be turning 31 in December. Yes, he did run over 1,100 yards this past year. But you can draft someone, too. Like, the ideal pick for me would just be getting Caleb Johnson in the door. Which here in the state of Iowa, we have a fair few Vikings fans as well as Iowa Hawkeye fans. I think that'd be a very nice connection there. If not him, Travion Henderson, I think would be a very nice yin and yang to that as well. Because Aaron Jones is not the same guy he was 3 years ago. None of us are. So if you get someone like Travion Henderson who's got that extra little bit of burst in there, I mean, we saw the game against Texas. He scored a 75-yard touchdown on a screen pass like 30 seconds before they were talking about he can take the ball to the house at any given second, and he literally did that. Like, I think those two guys would be very good for them. Isaiah Rodgers, getting him from the Philadelphia Eagles is also a very good move. You got Theo Jackson on a two-year extension as well. Sure, you lost Cam Bynum to the Indianapolis Colts. That's not ideal, but you did take two of their offensive linemen away, so that's, you know what, that's part of the course, I guess you got to say. Like, you take Kelly, you take Fries. Well, okay, they get Cam Bynum instead. That's your little trade-off here. But the Vikings, in a draft class that, in an offseason, I guess, where you've got to focus on building your offensive line, and where a lot of offensive linemen are either re-signing or just going other places, you've got to take what you can get. And they made two very, very good signings on the offensive line, two very good signings on the defensive line. Like, 2 weeks ago? Whatever it was, we did our first to worst and worst to first, like which team could miss the playoffs that made the playoffs the year before. I said the Vikings because of the fact there were a lot of question marks there, but the way they're building this roster right now, it's pretty damn impressive. Not that I shouldn't say I'm surprised. I mean, Quessie's a very good GM. Like, Kevin O'Connell's a very good head coach. So there's nothing I should be like too surprised about here. There were some connections with time about like Daniel Jones re-signing with the Vikings to be as a backup to JJ McCarthy, but I think signing with Indianapolis makes a little bit more sense there because there's more of a chance for him to start right there, and there's a little bit more hesitancy around the quarterback position in Indianapolis than there is in Minnesota. There's a lot more riding on Anthony Richardson's future because that last season kind of hurt him. JJ McCarthy's going in on a clean slate here. So this is the offseason where you bring in like a veteran. I don't know maybe Gardner Minshew. The Raiders just cut him, didn't they? Like, Gardner Minshew, I think, would be a very solid backup for JJ McCarthy. That would be my main goal. That would be what I would say. He was the first quarterback that popped in my head. I can't remember who else. Like Zach Wilson signed with the Dolphins. And that's a smart move on Zach Wilson's part. Is it a smart move on the Dolphins' part? Because your backup quarterback is guaranteed to play at least 2 games a year. And I mean start 2 games a year. So for the Dolphins' sake, is signing Zach Wilson the smartest move? But for Zach Wilson, you're going to play. So, hey, and the Jets, Zach Wilson's former team, they just signed Justin Fields, a guy who a lot of people said they should have drafted second overall, to a 2-year, I think, $40 million contract. So right now the New York Jets have the likes of Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, and Jordan Travis under center. So would they be a team to move for Jalen Milroe in the draft? Maybe. I don't know. Because like we talked about the Raiders, is there a realistic option for the Jets to get any of those top guys? Not right now. Like from the reports that I've seen today, it looks like Cam Ward's going 1 and Shedeur Sanders going 2 to the Browns. That's what it looks like. Lord knows how true any of those things are, because we are in silly season. We are in prime of silly season right now. So who the hell knows? But yeah, one team that we just brought up, the Cleveland Browns, I have to talk about because this one was one of the weirdest moves of the week so far. That was Myles Garrett. And we talked about it like a couple weeks ago when he first announced his trade request, or when he first put in his trade request. It was like, well, there's a very strong chance he'd be gone. But you know what? They can re-sign him. We've seen people put in trade requests before and nothing happened. So maybe nothing happens here. We don't really know. So it's like maybe Abdul Carter next to Myles Garrett, or Abdul Carter with the Browns, regardless of Myles Garrett's decision, would be a very smart move for them. But Myles Garrett was like, I want to win. I want to win Super Bowls. He was very adamant that he wanted to play for Super Bowls. So people were linking with the Bills. Again, if you're a big name free agent or a big name player possibly getting traded, you're going to go to the Bills. You're going to be linked with the Buffalo Bills. They also were linked with the Commanders. You saw links to the Eagles. Like all these links were popping up. And then ultimately, he signs a 4-year, $160 million extension with $123.5 million guaranteed. Average salary of $40 million per year. He is the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So where was the whole thing about I want to win Super Bowls? Because I can tell you this Cleveland Browns team ain't winning Super Bowls. Finished 3-14 last year. You're more than a quarterback away. Yes, the quarterback's a big factor in that, but you're more than a quarterback away in this team. And guess what? Your division's tough as hell. Baltimore, the Bengals, Pittsburgh are going to be a tough out. Regardless of how good they are at the end of the season, they're always a tough out. So you're in one of the hardest divisions in football from your standpoint, and Myles Garrett's just like, you know what? Screw desire to win. I want to get paid. Desire to win translates to $160 million over 4 years. Desire to win translates to I want to be the highest non-paid quarterback, highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. That's what that translates to. Which I can respect. I can respect that. I mean, get your money. And it's going to be hard to turn down that kind of money, but you can't just go in and talk about how you desire to win and then do that. And especially you have a no trade clause in your contract. Like you're going to be in the Browns till 2030. You're going to be in the Cleveland Browns till 2030. 29 years old right now. You're going to be 30 in December. Let's look at this from two aspects, I guess. Because we could say all about Myles Garrett. What about from the Browns' perspective? Again, they're not just a Myles Garrett away from doing anything. They're a lot of pieces away from winning 6 games next year. So would it have been smart for them to trade Garrett rather than sign him to a long-term agreement? And I'm not doubting Garrett as a player. Do not get that twisted. Myles Garrett's a future Hall of Famer. Like, there's no debating on what Myles Garrett's future is in regards to his football legacy and stuff like that. So it could sound ridiculous for me to go, well, maybe you should have just traded Myles Garrett, a future Hall of Famer, rather than signing him to a massive extension. But you're not in a position to do anything at all. So you kind of both, it's weird to say, because Garrett's just, again, $40 million annually. That's pretty crazy. But to say, like, put his hands behind his back, it's like, you got no trade clause now. You're just stuck there. Now you're being very wealthy while being stuck there. And maybe he could be a one-team guy. Maybe that could be his new legacy. But the switch from desire to win to, I can get paid. It's just weird. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm the weird one. But Max Crosby also signed an extension this offseason for the Las Vegas Raiders, which, again, he was linked with some trades this offseason, but it's kind of hard for me to picture him playing for any other team. And then you got Trey Hendrickson, who the Bengals are allowing to seek a trade, which I think this is funny. The Bengals franchise tagged T. Higgins. They waited till after Jamar Chase had a Triple Crown season to decide, oh, we need to pay him now. And you let your best and really only defender available for trade with Sam Hubbard, your other edge rusher, just retiring. So the Bengals are just going to go into every single game and hope to put up 40 points because that's the only way they're going to make the playoffs next year. And Trey Hendrickson is still on the team. Jamar Chase is still on the team. T. Higgins is still on the team. But it doesn't sound like anybody's really that happy in Cincinnati. Just based from an outsider's perspective. Again, I'm not a Bengals fan, never claimed to be, and I don't want to be. But it just feels like there's not a lot of happiness going around in Cincinnati. It really doesn't. So maybe the Browns can pass them up. Like, their offseason is just such a mess. Like, it's just so weird. Such a weird offseason for them. And the Browns, I guess I forgot about this. They did make a move, a nice little move here. They traded for Kenny Pickett. Traded Dorian Thompson-Robinson and a 5th-round draft pick for Kenny Pickett. So that's cool. I mean, Kenny Pickett, just looking at Kenny Pickett, he feels like a Cleveland Brown. Does that make sense? He feels like a Cleveland Brown. And then while we're on the topic of like confusing moves, because the Myles Garrett thing just confusing's not the right word because I understand why he did it because it's $40 million annually. It's pretty hard to just turn down. But the Texans, they had a pretty bad offensive line this past year. I think we can all admit that. Like, C.J. Stroud was the second most sacked QB in the league. He got sacked 52 times. He got sacked 8 times the game against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. Like, they just got blown up. He got sacked, I think, 10 or 11 times in the playoffs in general. And so far this offseason, they have traded away Laramie Tunsil and Kenyon Green. Traded Kenyon Green for C.J. Gardner-Johnson for the Philadelphia Eagles. So you got safety help. And you traded Laramie Tunsil for, I think, a 3rd-round draft pick, if I'm not mistaken. And apparently it's a culture thing, but you need offensive line help. You're not supposed to get worse. Like, we know Laramie Tunsil's good. He's very good, actually. Very good. So are you just hoping that, like, let's say they draft Josh Simmons in the 1st round, and then I don't know what their next pick would be. Like, the Texans might be, I want to see what time in the 2nd round it would be. Texans draft. So you bank on Josh Simmons from Ohio State. You bank on that. And, okay, I'm not finding any picks here. I just need draft picks, 2025. Just give me their draft picks. Draft order for all 7 rounds. I don't need the 4. Just give me teams. Oh, God. Okay, fine. The Texans got the 58th pick. So you can hope that you can pair the Ohio State guys up together. Get Josh Simmons and then get Donovan Jackson. That can be your hope to get your guard and tackle combo figured out there. Or, because I find it hard to believe Donovan Jackson will be available at that point in time, but crazier things have happened. I didn't think Osiris Torrance would be available, and the Bills picked him, and that worked out pretty solidly. But maybe you get Marcus Mabeau from Purdue, Jonah S. from Arizona, Tate Ratledge, Jared Wilson from Georgia, 2 Georgia guys. Maybe you go after one of those, because Gray Zabel, Tyler Booker, they're not going to be available. Or you go with one of those guys at guard, and then you look at like Josh Connolly won't be available. Ursary from Minnesota could be an option. Cameron Williams from Texas. Wyatt Millum from West Virginia. Those could be options, I guess. But you're going to have to double down, and then you're going to have to figure out wide receiver. Yes, I know you're trading for Christian Kirk, which is another weird move because you could have just waited 12 hours for him to get cut, and then you could have just signed him in free agency. You didn't need to trade anything for him. You gave up a 7th-round draft pick for pretty much a guy who was guaranteed to walk. Like, Christian Kirk was done. You didn't need to trade for him. The reports were already out that he was getting cut from Houston. And you're like, we're going to send him a pick anyways. We feel bad for the guy. We'll trade for him. I guess that way it locks him down to coming to you, but like Tank Dell's pretty much guaranteed to miss all of the next season. Stephon Diggs ain't coming back, which I saw Stephon Diggs is linked with the Kansas City Chiefs, which if he does that, do it. That's all I got to say. The Bills play the Chiefs in Buffalo this year. Do that. But you also need receiver help too. So where do you go with the receiver? Like this whole draft for the Texans is just going to be revamping the offense pretty much. Off the line and wide receivers. That's going to be their main MO. First 3 rounds. Those are your options. In whatever order you want to do that in, whatever order you see fit. Personally, I would go with, it depends on who's available, obviously, but I would go with Josh Simmons first. Because I think he has the potential to be a top 10 pick. It's just the injury against Oregon. That's hurting him right now. Literally and figuratively. Like that's what's hurting him. So that's going to be the interesting thing to see where he falls. Like I've had him at Kansas City at 31 the past 2 mock drafts. There's a very good chance he goes much sooner than that. Because he's got the talent to go much sooner than that. But injuries are a bitch. We've seen better players fall further in the draft because of injuries. Like it's a curse, but that's the whole part of the offseason. If you're good enough, then, hey, you'll be fine wherever you go. Quarterback's going to be a little bit different, though, because that depends on a lot about circumstance as well. Because if you have a team and coach that don't want you, the GM drafted you, then that's a little bit harder it's a lot harder to succeed at that point. But you still have to have it in you as well. Like Josh Allen, prime example of that. Like the people believed in him, and he's reaped the benefits. Like, he won an MVP this last year. Like, he just signed a new contract extension with the Buffalo Bills that makes him the highest paid, or no, second highest, I believe, quarterback in the league to Dak Prescott, but total contract value is now the second highest contract in the league behind Mahomes and just above Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Herbert. Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are both tied at $275. But yeah, Josh Allen signs a new contract extension. 6 years, $330, $250 guaranteed. And yeah, I would have cried if he played anywhere else. So yeah, I'm fine with that. I would have been fine whatever contract Josh Allen signed. I would have been perfectly content with that. Perfectly content with that. The Bills also signed Josh Palmer from the Chargers, which I think is a very nice get. Very good separator, which some of the Bills did not have, like, at all. If you're talking about separation, the Bills were one of the worst teams in that metric last year. And Mac Hollins, who I was not very high on at the beginning of the year last year, or beginning of the season, sorry, and started loving at the end of the year, he signed with the Patriots. So that's not ideal. Don't really like that. Don't really like when anybody signs with the Patriots, let alone if it's a guy that's coming from my team who I actually kind of like. Those aren't very those things don't really work out together, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want that. I don't want nobody from the Patriots to succeed, and especially players that I like. That's what I was hoping for. And the Bills did also sign Michael Hyatt. Michael Hyatt, I believe is how it's pronounced, if I remember correctly. Michael Hyatt. It's not Hoked, but they signed him to this year from the Rams, got him for a 2-year contract, which is a nice little get. Nice little get from what I've read. Very good effort player. Very, very athletic. Posted a really good raw score at the Combine a few years ago. He's from Brown, from Ontario. Both are from Ontario. Both Palmer and Hecht are from Ontario. And, yeah, it's a nice little homecoming from them. The Bills also re-signed Ty Johnson, re-signed Reggie Gilliam, which are 2 very nice moves for the locker room and good players as well. And then the move that surprised me the most out of all of them was Joey Bosa. They signed him tonight to a 1-year deal. That was not a move that I thought was on the table. Joey Bosa reached agreement tonight on a 1-year, $12.6 million deal with the Buffalo Bills. I didn't see that one coming. I really didn't. Like, if we're looking at what the Bills were going to do this offseason, like, we said it from the jump, that I was never really sold on the idea that they were going to try and trade for Myles Garrett. That was never a realistic option. But we had to entertain it because it was like they're getting linked to it, but we know it's not really going to happen. But Bosa wasn't really one of those guys. Bosa, when he's healthy, is an absolute beast. 29 years old, former first-round draft pick, rookie of the year, 5-time Pro Bowler, all that great stuff. When he's fit and playing, he's one of the best edge rushers in football. Like, you look at the early portions of his career, 10.5 sacks, 12.5 sacks, 11.5 sacks, 10.5 sacks. Like, if you look at the past 2 years, and just 14 starts, he has 11.5 sacks through those games. Like, in just those 14. Like, he puts up really good numbers. He's an absolute terror coming off the edge. But the thing is, again, he just can't stay healthy at this point in time. Like, he played 14 games last year, started 9 of them. Like, he's a very, very good player. Very good player when he's healthy. I'm very concerned about the injuries, but it's a 1-year contract. Like, it's not like they did with Von Miller, who they cut last week, and it's like, oh, they're signing him to a 6-year contract and stuff like that. Like, no, they're not doing that. I'm perfectly content with Joey Bosa signing a 1-year deal worth $12 million with the Bills. And the Bills have done a really good job at re-signing a restructuring contract deal, like a Greg Rousseau, look at Terrell Bernard, Khalil Shakir, Josh Allen. Like, they've done a really good job at restructuring, re-signing players. And I've really liked this Bills offseason, but there's a lot of really weird people on social media like, oh my God, Brandon B needs to get fired. Like, he's ruining the rosters. Like, what did you actually expect this offseason to be? Like, the Bills were not going to be spenders like the Vikings, like the Bears, who have made a bunch of big moves. They've drastically improved gave a massive facelift to their offensive line, which was a massive need for them. Ashton Genty looks like the prime candidate to go to Chicago if he doesn't go to Vegas first. And if he goes to Vegas, maybe someone like Shamar Stewart from A&M goes to the Bears at 10. Go on the defensive side of the ball there. But obviously, I'm sure for a lot of Bears fans, Ashton Genty would be the dream. I wouldn't even be upset for the Bears if they just drafted a tackle still. Like, you can't have too many offensive linemen there. It's not a bad problem to have too many offensive linemen. Especially if you're Ben Johnson, who, if you remember Detroit, they used a lot of tackle eligible this past year, so maybe that could be an option. You don't draft first-round players with that tackle eligible tag, but still, it's never a bad thing to have too many offensive linemen, but they weren't going to be those big spenders. The Patriots have spent a lot of money this offseason as well. Milton Williams, they got him from the Philadelphia Eagles this year. Massive deal for him. Nice little get for the interior defensive line. That's not what they were going to do. And if you were a Bills fan and thought that was going to happen, I can't really help you. I really can't. So I've liked what the Bills have done this offseason. It's been on par with what I thought. The Joey Bosa thing surprised me because, again, I thought he was destined to go to San Francisco. I was like 99% sure he was going to play with Nick Bosa in San Fran. And they just cut Leonard Floyd today. It was like it was all tracking out for him to go, and then he just signed to the Bills. And I guess while we're on the topic of the San Francisco 49ers, that's a team that's been doing a lot of cuts. Like, they just cut Kyle Juszczyk today. They cut Leonard Floyd that we talked about. They traded Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders last week. Like, they're making some moves in regards to cutting players, getting ring players. Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga, they signed with the Broncos. So those two players from their defense side of the ball are gone. And this is what I was talking about. It's really easy to build a roster when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. That's what we talked about the Vikings. Like, having that rookie contract is so important to build. And you look at the Rams when they went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. Jared Goff was on a rookie contract. They could pay the Todd Gurley's and the Aaron Donalds of the world. And they went to a freaking Super Bowl. They might not have won it, but they went. And you look at the 49ers right now who are gearing up to sign Brock Purdy to a long-term extension. You can't afford to have all these bigger name players. You're going to have to let key players like Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw go in free agency. That's just what you're going to have to do. And there's going to be some suggestions about Brock Purdy's contract, what he's looking for in a contract, what's his actual worth. Because if we're looking at those top 10 quarterbacks contracts that we talked about, so the top 10 just total contract value is Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lawrence, Herbert, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson. Apart from Deshaun Watson, obviously, is he better than any of the other quarterbacks on this list? Is he really better than Kyler Murray? Could you tell me that he's really better than Kyler Murray? And you can say yes or no. You can call me an idiot for even asking the question. But from talent standpoint, there's a conversation to be had about who's a better quarterback between the two. So where would you put Brock Purdy on that category? How much would you be willing to pay? Like, I've seen fake sports accounts on social media talking about trading to the Tennessee Titans the first overall pick. Well, then the Titans will be in that exact same situation again, and they're not in any position to take on a quarterback contract like Brock Purdy's, what he would be expecting to get paid. And I would never trade a first overall pick for Brock Purdy. I would never do that. And I hope the 49ers wouldn't do that either. Because I think Kyle Shanahan likes Brock Purdy a lot. Because he's the type of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan likes to have. Someone that's not going to do anything too flashy. He's going to do what the play card says. He's basically a scout team quarterback. That's disrespectful. He's going to do what Kyle Shanahan tells him to do. He's not going to do anything too outlandish. He's going to get the ball in the receiver's hands or get the ball in the playmaker's hands, and they're going to make plays. And he's going to make money off of it. I know that was a little mean saying he's a scout. He's reading the play card and doing that. Like, it doesn't matter if you're gonna throw an interception, just throw the ball so the defense gets a good look. And he does have experience doing that in the NFL. But that contract thing that's going to be an interesting talking point with Brock Purdy. But trade-wise, I don't see a trade happening, especially the Titans. Like that, there's no. I get Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. I've said this for years now, but we have to be a little bit realistic here in regards to who is worthy of a number 1 overall pick in the draft in regards to trading for that pick. And Brock Purdy, who has not been paid yet, I don't think is that quarterback. Because then the Titans are going to need to pay him. And then we're back to square one because the Titans might not want to pay him either because the Titans are very good. The Titans got no weapons. So by proxy, he's not going to be very good. And then they're not going to want to pay him what he thinks he's worth. And we're just restarting the cycle all over again. So I've seen numbers of like 40 mil, 45 mil for Purdy. But yeah, I don't know what his contract will look like. I don't know what I would be willing to pay him. Josh Allen is making 50 mil annually, 55 mil annually. Brock Purdy shouldn't be anywhere near that number. But because of the quarterback position and how valuable it is to the NFL, he's going to get paid that. Just naturally. That's just how it works. Regardless of it, if it's true or not, regardless of it, he's worthy of that contract or not, that's just what the position requires him to get paid. That's league standard value. That's just what happens. And with Josh Allen restructuring, other teams in the NFL are like, oh, shit. Well, now our quarterback's going to be wanting that number because they reset the market. I know it's a different position. Remember when Christian Kirk signed with the Jaguars? Every receiver wanted to get paid because like, what the hell is Christian Kirk get paying? So whenever Brock Purdy signs this contract, I guarantee we're going to see some quarterbacks re-upping because they think they're better than Purdy and deserve to be paid more than him. I guarantee that will happen. Because it's just what always happens. If there's a quarterback or a player that gets paid a certain amount of money, everybody who's in that position is going to look like, well, I'm better than that guy. I need to get paid more. And then we're going to start this whole cycle. Like Christian Kirk basically got A.J. Brown traded from Tennessee to Philly. Like that's one of those trades. Tyreek Hill to Miami was another one of those things. Like that's just how it happens in the NFL. People want to get paid. Like, yes, you want to play football, but as the ownerships and as the fans always say, it's a business first. And you got to get what's yours. And I respect that. It's like Myles Garrett. I may not agree with the optics of it, but I understand why you did it. And I mean, I have to like it. Again, you sat around saying you desire to win, and then you turn around and made the money. Again, business decision over football decision. That's the talking point there. And you're going to have to find those situations throughout the NFL draft as well, because there's going to be players that might want to move around the board, who might not want to go to certain situations, might not want to do this or that. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to say this first. I saw this today. Oh, this is hilarious. 2015 was the last time the Cowboys have signed a free agent from another team for over $6 million a year. That player was Greg Hardy. UFC fighter Greg Hardy. Like that's where we're at with the Minnesota Vikings right now. That is hilarious. Or not Minnesota, the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys. That's what I meant, not the Minnesota Vikings. No, the Vikings have made money. Vikings have spent some money here. But no, the NFL draft is an interesting talking point when it comes to all of this stuff, because you're going to get people just spouting out random things, and I think it's kind of interesting to see these things happen. Like, social media has become a place where you don't need to be right. You just need to be as different as possible, if that makes sense. You don't need to sit back and make like actual logical sense with anything. You just need to post it. And usually you see this with like the ML footballs of the world or the Dove Klymans or things like that. Like, not real football, not real accounts that aren't associated with anything, but they tweet out a rumor that Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport or somebody just tweeted, and then they tweet it 5 seconds after they did and say, per this, and it just grows their account, or they make up like, what? With the head exploding emoji with the what in all caps, or wow. And it's just like they post a video and it's no volume to it or whatever. Usually you see those, but I brought this up before, but FanDuel, for being as big of a company as they are and seeing them on social media as much as I do, it boggles my mind how much they actually shit post on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. Like, you usually don't see these types of companies who have their own commercials, who are a well-known company that people use on the regular basis, and they're still posting like this. They're not trying to grow their company or anything. Like, the one I bring up all the time with FanDuel is asking if they would rather have Prime LaDainian Tomlinson or Alvin Kamara. Like, what kind of stupid-ass conversation is that? Why did you post that? Why did you post that? Because it's going to get engagement. And to me, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm literally giving it what it wants. But when it comes to the NFL draft, I have to always do these things because they're very interesting. Like the overrated or underrated or breakout candidates. Like these types of things. Or the comparisons. Comparisons can be very wishy-washy. Very wishy-washy. Like, you can say, like, this guy's skill set is similar to this guy, but I don't think he'll become him. Like, if you remember back in 2020, we compared off just what they can do with the football, not that they'd ever develop into that, Jordan Love to Mahomes. Not that Jordan Love would ever be Patrick Mahomes, but that they can do similar-ish things. And if you watch Jordan Love, he can do similar things to Patrick Mahomes, just nowhere near as good or as consistent as Patrick Mahomes. And that's not saying anything bad. That's not saying anything bad. There's not a lot of people who could do anything close to Patrick Mahomes. The only one that could do that is Josh Allen. But no, you get stylistic comparisons. That's the most comparisons here, where you got to be very careful in how you word, how you compare them to. So I looked at this. It was FanDuel on Instagram, and it was 2025 NFL quarterback draft prospects. Statistical comparison. So it's statistical comparison here. That's it. Statistical. And when I say that, I'm saying it again, statistical, so we can further go down this list, and you can scratch your head a little bit with me and go, I wonder where the statistical compare, because that's the dumbest way to compare anybody. Why would you statistically compare people? Doesn't show the full picture at all. Doesn't show how they are as a player or anything. Statistical comparison? That's what we're going to do to compare quarterbacks? Like the first one on here is Kenny Pickett to Shedeur Sanders. In what way, really, do Kenny Pickett and Shedeur Sanders play alike? Like, they both don't have great arms, I guess. They're not incredibly mobile, but can make plays on the ground. But if you're talking about statistical comparison, they have no stats that are similar, really. Kenny Pickett never rushed for less than 90 yards in his career, and he played 5 years at Pitt. Shedeur Sanders has one season where he's ran over 1 yard. Like, we're talking about statistical. Kenny Pickett passing the ball has one season where he had over 13 passing touchdowns. That happened one time. He threw 42 in his last year in college. Shedeur Sanders has never had less than 25 passing touchdowns in his entire career, 4 years in college. Kenny Pickett had one season where he had less. Hold on, how am I going to word this? Because it's different for touchdowns than interceptions. So in 5 years at Pitt, his interceptions were 1, 6, 9, 9, and 7. Shedeur Sanders was 8, 6, 3, and 10. So you want to do interceptions are the same, I guess? Not really. Like completion percentage-wise, which I don't think is an accurate description of how accurate a quarterback is, just says quarterback threw the ball, receiver caught the ball. It doesn't matter where it was actually thrown. Kenny Pickett had one season where he had above a 67% completion percentage. That was his last year. And before that, he never had a season where he had more than 61%. Sure, Sanders never had a season less than 65. Like, what statistical value here are we comparing here? There's no statistic that is comparable between the two. But it gets better. It gets better. Jackson Dart and Jalen Hurts. Now, I will say this for this comparison. Size, they are very similar. Jackson Dart and Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is freaking massive. Like, he's freaking built. Everybody can see that Jalen Hurts is built. But Jackson Dart, height and weight-wise, is the same size as Jalen Hurts, which is kind of weird to think about, at least when they were coming out of college. But you look at ESPN, 6'2", 225 for Dart, 6'1", 223 for Jalen Hurts. Like, they are very similar in size. I think they put up similar numbers at the or not similar numbers, but if you look at their combine stuff, they're very similar there too. But again, this is statistical categories here. Like Jalen Hurts, Jackson Dart can move. No doubt about it. Jackson Dart can move, but he was never as big of a threat running the ball as Jalen Hurts was. Jalen Hurts, before Jalen Milroe this past year, held the record for SEC rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. He had 13 rushing touchdowns his freshman year at Alabama. His second year at Alabama, he had 17 passing touchdowns and 1 interception. And he came second in the Heisman Trophy race to Joe Burrow, where he actually lit up the world passing, 3,800 yards passing with 32 touchdowns, with also 1,200 yards rushing and 20 rushing touchdowns there as well. 52 total touchdowns in one season at Oklahoma, which sprung him into, 53, because he had a receiving touchdown in there as well, which sprung him into second-round draft pick conversation, which is nothing close to what he was prior to that. Jackson Dart has put up very good rushing numbers, very good rushing numbers. But his max number is 614, which would be the 4th highest of Jalen Milroe's career. His career high would be the 4th highest of Jalen Milroe's career. Jackson Dart also has 2 seasons of over 3,300 yards, 1 season where he almost had 3,000 passing yards in there as well. Jalen Hurts, prior to his last season in Oklahoma, his best season was 2,700 yards passing. So for passing yard standpoint, like we talked about the rushing numbers, that'd be the 4th highest out of Jackson Dart seasons. That'd be the 4th highest. His highest number would be number 2, but only by 200 yards. Thereabout. Statistical value, no, they're not similar there either. Like size-wise, yeah, I can get the comparison, but size-wise. But Jackson Dart's a much more natural thrower than Jalen Hurts was coming out of college. I'm not saying what he is now. Coming out of college, no. Then we got then the next one, we've got Cam Ward and Baker Mayfield. And from a stylistic standpoint, you know what? I don't hate it all too much. From a stylistic standpoint, I don't really dislike it. I mean, both were not very highly recruited guys coming out of high school. I mean, damn, Cam Ward ran a triple option offense coming out of high school. And now he's the career passing touchdown leader across NCAA football. Both FCS and FBS level. He's the he has the highest touchdown. He has 158 passing touchdowns in that stretch. So out of the 3 that we've seen so far, this one's the best one that I would say. Cam Ward to Shedeur Sanders is the best one on here. And Cam Ward's a little bit bigger, I guess. He's not as thick in the chest as Baker Mayfield is. He's not going to try and run over anybody. But the 2 guys, they can move. They don't necessarily rely on their athletic ability too much. I would say Baker relied on that a little bit more. Or not relied on it. He he ran the ball more down the line of past line of scrimmage than Cam Ward did. I would say Cam Ward, pound for pound, at least in this last season at Miami, he really did it a little bit more at Washington State because he needed to. But Cam Ward's a better athlete than Baker. But Baker likes to run a little bit more. He likes the contact a little bit more than Cam Ward does. But I think that's actually not that bad, if we're being 100% honest here. That one's not that bad. Okay? But now we get into the interesting one here. We went from not that bad to probably one of the worst comparisons I've ever seen. Whether you want to talk about stylistically, you want to talk about stats, whatever you want to talk about. So it's Jalen Milroe. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to try and figure out who they compared Jalen Milroe to. Reminder, the guy from Alabama who just set the single season rushing touchdown record for the SEC, or for quarterbacks. Reminder for that. Okay, that was about 10 seconds. No, they compared him to Ryan Mallett. Ryan Mallett, for statistical value, was a lot better, put up a lot better statistical numbers passing the ball than Jalen Milroe did. Jalen Milroe has one season of over 20 passing touchdowns. He had 23 last year. Ryan Mallett had 32 and 30 in his 2 seasons at Arkansas. Okay, so there's where they're not even close. Jalen Milroe never passed for over 3,000 yards. Ryan Mallett did twice. Both seasons getting over 3,600 yards. Jalen Milroe's max is 2,800. Ironically, he had 10 yards more this year than he did last year. I didn't even realize that. Exactly 10 more yards. 28-34, 28-44. Running the ball, not even close. Again, Jalen Milroe put up 32 rushing touchdowns last 2 seasons at Alabama. 32. Combined, in his 3 years in college, Ryan Mallett put up 7 rushing touchdowns. In 3 years. Jalen Milroe put up 20 rushing touchdowns this year alone. What statistical value did we get here? What statistical value? And that reminds me, and I don't want to disturb Ryan Mallett too much. Rest in peace, Ryan Mallett. Remember, he died a couple years ago. But there was one point that I saw, his first round mock drafts. You know we got to talk about first round mock draft. Again, I don't know why I'm talking about these because they're so ridiculously stupid accounts that exist for some reason. But he posted something about Shedeur Sanders, who didn't run the 40-yard dash, you remember, at the Combine. And he posted a video of Shedeur Sanders not running 40 yards in a straight line, not at full speed either, and basically said he clocked a 5.37 or something along those lines. I screenshotted it, but I can't find it anywhere. It's like, what are you talking about? A 5.3, what are you talking about? He would not run a 5.37. I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders run a 4.4, but Shedeur Sanders was a lot faster than a 5.37. I would expect that he'd run a 4.75 or something. And he's not like the most athletically gifted guy in the world, but he's definitely getting moving a 40-yard dash. That was he was the slowest combine time as Ryan Mallett. And you compare him to Shedeur Sanders, that's just you're just hating for the sake of hating. But that QB prospect comparison, what comparison is even close? Not even the same size. Ryan Mallett was like 6'6". Jalen Milroe was 6'2". Like, where is this comparison even close to coming from? Statistical, play style, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make no sense. And this one we're just being mean. Quinn Ewers to Nate Sudfeld. Why are we making that comparison? No disrespect to Nate Sudfeld, I guess, but like that. Why? Why is that a comparison that we're making here? Not that Nate Sudfeld was like bad at Indiana or anything, but no, it's not. Quinn Ewers is better than Nate Sudfeld. No. And then Will Howard to Kevin Hogan, Dylan Gabriel to Easton Stick, just because they played forever. Kyle McCord to Jarrett Stidham. Like, there's not like horrific ones as you go further down. They're not all horrific here, but Ryan Mallett to Jalen Milroe is definitely one of the craziest comparisons I've ever seen in my life. Now, if you look at like Jarrett Stidham, you look at Easton Stick, who's a beast at North Dakota State, even though he beat Iowa as the starting quarterback there. Kevin Hogan, he was a starting quarterback for Stanford in that Rose Bowl game. Will Howard also played in the Rose Bowl. Nate Sudfeld played it for Indiana. So, yeah, these aren't like, I know at face value you look at those quarterbacks and you're like, ass. But they were all good in college. Jarrett Stidham was really good at Auburn. He was good at Baylor prior to transferring to Auburn. Easton Stick, I believe, is the all-time winningest quarterback in the FCS level. or was. Maybe Mark Gronowski passed him. I could be mistaken there. Kevin Hogan was the starting quarterback for Stanford. Christian McCaffrey was there, so that was a pretty easy living there. So, yeah, they're good quarterbacks, but it's just weird to see these guys compared to them. Again, Ryan Mallett to Jalen Milroe. Like, we're just having fun here, right? We just got to be having fun. We can't be taking we can't talk about that one. Even though I did. But yeah, fun stuff. NFL free agency, NFL draft. First day of NFL free agency is always crazy. Always crazy. And this one was no different. There are so many freaking moves that took place. I screenshotted every single one of them. So we are going to go run through all of these. Okay? Day one of free agency. Sam Darnold to the Seahawks. Justin Fields to the Jets. Jimmy Garoppolo to the Rams. Zach Wilson to the Dolphins. Najee Harris Chargers. Elijah Mitchell to the Chiefs. Pretty solid move there. Samaje Perine Bengals. Javonte Williams Cowboys. Chris Godwin back to the Bucks. Diami Brown Jaguars. Josh Palmer Bills. Jerry Slayton back to the Giants. On the same contract that I believe they refused to give Saquon Barkley. Matt Hollins to the Patriots. Luke Farrell to the 49ers. Drew Dahlman to the Bears. Good signing there. Ryan Kelly to the Vikings. Robert Hainsey to the Jaguars to replace... Drew Dahlman's from the Vikings. Or from the Falcons, sorry. Scratch that. Aaron Banks to the Packers. Jalen Moore to the Chiefs. Patrick McCarry to the Jaguars. James Daniels to the Dolphins. Dan Moore to the Titans. Morgan Moses to the Patriots. Morgan Moses is interesting was he's 34 years old and they signed him to, I think, a 3 or 4 year deal, but that's an interesting one. Grady Jarrett to the Bears. Milton Williams to the Patriots. Poona Ford to the Rams. Tershawn Wharton to the Panthers. B.J. Hill back to the Bengals. DJ Jones to the Broncos. Javon Kittle to the Commanders. Bobby Brown to the Panthers. Josh Sweat to the Cardinals. Big deal for the Cardinals there. Khalil Mack back to the Chargers. Son Wright to the Bucks. Deo Odiengbo to the Bears. Malcolm Kuntz back to the Raiders. Hoyt, that's what it is. Michael Hoyt to the Bills. Chase Young's back to the Saints. Patrick Jones to the Panthers. Joseph Asai to the Bengals. Back to the Bengals. Dre Greenlaw to the Broncos. Robert Spieline to the Patriots. Ernest Jones back to the Seahawks. Cody Barton to the Titans. Malik Harrison to the Steelers. Akeem Davis-Gaither to the Cardinals. DJ Reed to the Lions. Travarius Ward to the Colts. Carlton Davis to the Patriots. Jordan Lewis to the Jaguars. Darius Slade to the Steelers. Isaiah Rodgers to the Vikings. Brandon Stevens to the Jets. Nate Hobbs to the Packers. Paulson Adebo. To the Giants. Dante Jackson to the Chargers. Mike Jackson to the Panthers. Byron Murphy Jr. back to the Vikings. Cam Bynum to the Colts. Trayvon Moehrig to the Panthers. Hufanga to the Broncos. Jeremy Chin to the Raiders. Yeah. Busy day in NFL free agency. Week 1 of free agency. The offseason is still young. We still got to wait for Russell Wilson. We still got to wait for Aaron Rodgers to figure out where they're going. If I had to make predictions right now, based off what I've read, it sounds like the Rodgers to the Giants and Russ to the Titans. Or Russ to the Steelers. Either one. That's what it sounds like. Or Russ to the Giants and Rodgers to the Steelers. I have no idea. I have absolutely no clue. But that's the beauty and the beast of the NFL and all that great stuff. Oh, DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Ravens. Forgot about that one. That one happened like a couple hours ago. Yeah, there's going to be even more crazy moves that happen this offseason. It's going to be some crazy trade that happens prior to the draft. Someone's going to shoot up like freaking crazy. I don't know who. At this point in time, I don't know when a trade will take place in the draft, but there's going to be something, right? There always is one. I don't know about a team jumping from 27 to 10 or anything like that, but hey, crazier things have happened. And with that being said, I'm going to end things here on this Wednesday edition of the Logan Blackman Show. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did not, I sincerely apologize. Try to be better next time. Hope your team did well and re-sign and sign people who you wanted them to. If they didn't, then I sincerely apologize. I hope they do better next time, unless you're a fan of the Dolphins, Patriots, Jets, or Chiefs, then screw you guys. You guys can do what you want. But, yeah, that's all I've got for you today. Again, I hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, I see the podcast. Try better next time. Make sure you check out all the different forms of social media that I mentioned before. I've been Logan Blackman, and I will see you guys later. Peace.